you know, I love to repeat my mistakes. Hi, I'm Zoe. I make a lot of mistakes and I read a lot. And in this video, I am going to be recapping the books that I read in January. January is traditionally a very good reading month for me. I usually get a lot of reading done. Work is a lot quieter after the holidays, and I just have more pep. I'm thinking about all of the new books coming out in the new year, and I start thinking about all the arcs that I have that I haven't read yet, so I get a fire under me to really read a lot. So this month I read 15 books, which is a lot. I'm trying not to read as many books in 2024 as I have in the previous 2 years, but I was happy with my pace of reading this month. I didn't feel rushed, and I had some really amazing reads. So let's get into it. The first book that I finished in January was Queer Werewolves Destroy Capitalism. This is a collection of smutty stories by MJ Lyons. My friend Danny, who works at Massey Books in Vancouver, gifted me this book. She didn't finish it, she DNF'd it. I think it was just a little bit much for her. You know what? I enjoyed what this book was for what it was. That doesn't make a lot of sense, but it's a collection of short stories, and we've got Queer Werewolves Destroying Capitalism. That's the title of the first story, and it's werewolves in Toronto just going at it and living their lives and destroying capitalism a little bit, kind of. There's a sentient alien slime. There is cowboys, some cowfolk fiction. There is historic bathhouses in Paris. So, you know, there's kind of something in here for everyone. And you know what? Buy this for your friend as a gag, and maybe they'll have fun reading it. I think it was fun. I had a good time. We can move on from this. The second book I read in January was a flop for me. Buddy read this with Tanis. Josephine Angelini was an author that we both read as teenagers. She wrote a trilogy of books that are like based on Greek demigods, but a lot more angsty than Percy Jackson. And we love those books, so we both got secondhand copies of this book, which is the first in a different trilogy about like witches. So it's young adult witches, parallel universes, which sounds like fun for young adult. This was awful. I think I gave this 2 stars, and I retroactively could give it 1 star out of 5. It was terrible. I had to brute force my way through the last, like, honestly, the last half of the book was awful. The whole thing was awful. I had a terrible time with this. I don't want to think about it. I don't want it in my house anymore. I don't want to talk about it anymore. It was not fun. Do not recommend. The next book I read in January was The Infinity Particle by Wendy Zhu. This is a young adult graphic novel. It's a bit sci-fi, talking about AI, kind of the ethics of AI, but it's also very sweet and a romance as well. I really liked Wendy Zhu. She did Tide Song. I loved that graphic novel. It's a middle grade graphic novel about merf people, if I'm remembering correctly. I read it when it came out a few years ago, but I really recommend that. That one was so sweet and so cute. And she also did Mooncakes, and I liked that one as well. That one's also very sweet and lovely. Infinity Particle I did enjoy. It's very cute. I read it in like an afternoon. Not my favorite like young adult romance graphic novel, but definitely sweet and cute, and I would recommend it if you need a little brain break. Very cute. Cute. Next book I read in January I borrowed from Georgia. Thank you for lending me your copy. A Study in Drowning by Reid. All of my girlies at the bookstore loved this book. They were absolutely dying for it last year in the fall and in the summertime. It's definitely a cold weather book. I definitely would have loved this book if I was 16. I would have like made this book my entire personality. I think Reid is so amazing at writing settings that mirror our own worlds, but kind of let you as a reader fill in the gaps. And I think she also is amazing at conveying atmosphere. It's a very kind of eerie book. I just found that as soon as I understood what was going to happen in this book, the story really loosened for me and it lost me. Like I was 150 pages in and I texted Georgia and I was like, this is going to happen, this is going to happen, this is going to happen. And then all of those things did happen. Not to say that predictable plot or formulaic plot is unenjoyable. I love to read romance books and those are very often formulaic and predictable. It just lost me in that part of it. But I did enjoy my reading experience, and if you are a person who still likes to read young adult and finds that category of books enchanting and fun, I would definitely recommend this book. Just maybe not for me. The next book I read in January was Winter in Sokcho by Elisa Shua Dusapin and translated by Aneesa Higgins. This is another book that didn't really hit the mark for me. I thought it was very atmospheric. You were in Sokcho. It was very, like, the place was a character, was almost many characters in this book. I just found that the actual characters were very hollow. They were shells of characters for me. Maybe that's what Dusapin was going for. Maybe I am a tasteless heathen. It won the National Book Award in 2021 for translated literature. I read this as a buddy read with Colleen, which is always fun for me. I love doing buddy reads. And I read it in an afternoon. Maybe that's another reason why it won't really stick with me. Definitely a all vibes and no plot sort of book. I got it at a library book sale. I paid $1 for it. And I passed it on to a friend who actually read it and quite enjoyed it. So maybe it's for you. Was it for me? The next book that I read in January was one of my favorite memoirs I have ever read. It was Son of Elsewhere by Elamin Abdelmahmoud. I listened to the audiobook and Elamin reads it. He is a radio man. He hosts Commotion on CBC Radio 1, which I do really enjoy listening to. I am a fan of Elamin previous to my reading experience, and now that I've read this book, I think I'm a very large fan. And I loved listening to this book. I can take my time with audio. Sometimes it takes me a long time to get through an audiobook, but I went through this quite fast for me, and I didn't speed it up at all because I just love listening to Elamin's voice. He has such a good radio voice, and he takes us through his life, not chronologically, and I much prefer memoirs that jump around because that's more natural to me in storytelling. But Elamin takes us through his life. He emigrated to Kingston, Ontario, Canada from Khartoum in Sudan when he was 13, which is of course a very volatile age. So to move across the world at that age would be just overwhelming. And he didn't speak English before. He and his mother came to Kingston, so we had to deal with that. It's a lot about, of course, cross-cultural exchange and culture shock. A big takeaway that I had from this book is that Elamin is a deeply interested person. If you had a conversation with him, he would ask you about what music you're listening to, what books you're reading, how your mother is doing, and he would really care about your answer and really listen to what you're saying. I just loved this book, and I really recommend it. I think it might be a top book of the year for me in January, which is a nice feeling. I absolutely loved it. The next book I read this month was Black Punk Now. This is a collection anthology of nonfiction, fiction, and comics about punk music, and it's all by Black authors. I wouldn't say that I am deeply into the punk scene. I definitely enjoy punk music, but I don't have a huge understanding of punk culture, especially modern punk. But that didn't take away from my experience of reading this book. I had some pieces in here that I absolutely loved. Of course, I did picked this book up because Hanif Abdurraqib has a piece in here. That was one of my favorite pieces in here. But there is also quite a few essays in here that I really enjoyed, and the fiction writing I also really enjoyed, thought was really beautiful. This is an arc that I read, but the finished copy looks like this as well and is available in paperback, which we love. So definitely, even if you're not into punk, if this cover appeals to you, I would say pick it up. You're going to find something in here that will resonate with you. Definitely recommend. Very interesting book to read. Next book I read was The Duke Gets Desperate by Diana Quincy. This is a bodice ripper historical fiction romance. I picked this up because the main character, the main female protagonist, she is Palestinian. She randomly inherits a manor from her distant aunt or distant cousin, and she travels to England from America. This is, I believe, in the mid-1800s. I'm not great at my English time periods, so maybe it's not Regency, but it seemed Regency to me, whatever that means. Anyway, she travels from America to England to see this manor that she has inherited, and she gets entangled with the man, the Duke, who was supposed to inherit this manor. And of course things ensue and blah blah blah. It's a bodice ripper, you know what's gonna happen. But I actually I enjoyed this book. It was fun. Diana Quincy is an Arab American writer, and it was really nice the way she interjected and really interspersed the main character's Palestinian heritage into the book. I enjoyed this. If that's a genre you enjoy, I would definitely recommend it. Next in January, I read Parasol Against the Axe by Helen Oyeyemi. I enjoy Helen Oyeyemi. I have read a few of her books in the past. I love Icarus Girl. I read that. It was one of the only books I had to read in university, and I really enjoyed that book. So when we got this arc, first of all, it's gorgeous, and second of all, I loved the concept. It's set in Prague. Prague is definitely more than one character in this book. Prague has many characters in this book, and it is also about a book that may or may not be a book. This is a very playful novel. It's being published, I think, in April. I believe in April this year. It is coming out in a hardcover, which I think is a shame. I think it would move more in paperback, and also I think it would be prettier in paperback, but I'm not in charge. But if you enjoy Olga Tokarczuk's writing, I think you will enjoy this. It's extremely playful. I had a really good time reading this book. My mom liked it as well, and we don't always have the same taste in books, but we enjoyed this one a lot. If you like playful and sometimes strange writing, check this one out. Put a hold on it at the library, take a look at it. I enjoyed it. Next in January, I read Broughtupsy by Christina Cooke. This is a novel about a young Jamaican Canadian girl who returns to Jamaica after her brother dies. It's a very sad concept. Her mother passed away when she was quite young, and she moved with her younger brother and her father to Texas, and her older sister stayed in Kingston in Jamaica. It's a lot about her relationship with her older sister and how that distance really shaped her life. I had really high hopes for this novel. It's a debut. The author is also Jamaican Canadian. She lives in Halifax, I believe, now. I think my high hopes were maybe why it fell a little bit short for me. I really thought the concept was gorgeous. I thought the writing was absolutely stunning. I saved a bunch of notes in my Storygraph app of quotes from the book that I thought were just beautiful. But the last 60 pages or so I found really disjointed from the rest of the novel. And when a book is only about 220 pages, that's a lot to seem disjointed. But I definitely will look for Christina Cooke in the future, and if you thought the concept sounded good, I would still say pick it up. especially because it's out in paperback and you're supporting a debut author, which we love to do. Also, the cover in the US, it's being distributed by Catapult in the US. The American cover is beautiful. Not that, I don't think that this is not beautiful, but the American cover is really gorgeous. Yeah, so queer Jamaican Canadian fiction that you can give a try. Next in January, I listened to Hijab, Butch Blues by Lamya H. I listened to the audiobook of this, which I really, really highly recommend. It is not read by the author. This book was written anonymously. Lamya H is a pseudonym because she is queer and Muslim and South Asian, and she lives in the US and she's not out to her family or community, so it's sort of protecting her identity. And I did not realize how much I was enjoying and how much I was learning from this book until it was quite a bit into it. That's not to say that I wasn't enjoying it, I just didn't compute how good it was for a little bit. It's told in segments, each are named after a different figure from the Quran, and Lamya shapes her life by those figures and uses them to explain big events in her life and choices that she made. Lamya is queer. She is attracted to women, and she realizes this at a young age, living in the Middle East before she comes to America, to New York, to study. And it's a lot of her reconciling her faith with her sexuality and her queerness and her politics, and really making those things all come together and work. And they do work. She does a really, really lovely job of demystifying Islam for people who don't know a lot about it, and also explaining the Islamophobia that is inherent in the queer community. Really, really highly recommend this book. Highly recommend the audiobook too if you can swing it. Next book is 10 Bridges I've Burnt by Broughtupsy. I love Broughtupsy. I don't think there's a single person alive or dead who is like Broughtupsy. I read 100 Boyfriends a few years ago. That book like broke my brain a little bit. I thought it was gorgeous and vulgar and amazing, and if you haven't read it, then you should read it. It's a gorgeous book. And this is Broughtupsy's memoir in prose, so it's all poems, and it's definitely memoir. It's definitely memoir. I understand that. Memoir in verse. I don't even know what I'm talking about anymore. I really enjoyed this. I will be honest with you, I read the first half stoned, and then I went back and read it sober, and it slapped both ways. I will also reread this probably before it comes out in March, which it does come out in March. No, oh my gosh, it comes out this month. It comes out in February. It might already be out when this video is out, and it's coming out in paperback, which we love. Thank you, FSG. It was a great idea. And thank you so much to Cam and Troy for sending me this copy. I really wanted an ARC, and Troy got an ARC, and he very, very kindly mailed it to me. So thank you to Cam and Troy for doing that. That was really kind of you guys. Yeah, I really loved this. Super recommend, whether or not you've read Broughtupsy's previous work. He's just so funny and smart and wonderful, and also an absolute joy to follow on Instagram. I love him. He's so cool. He's an author that when I read his work, I get hungry for more. I have a copy of Johnny Would You Let Me If My Dick Were Bigger, and I do want to read that this year. And I also want to read his other novel that I can't remember the name of right now, but just a wonderful author. Fantastic, makes literature more interesting just by being around. Wonderful book. My phone just died as I was filming this, so I got kind of cut off halfway through, and I actually finished talking about all these things, but now I'm back. So if I seem a bit odd, it's because I watched a video of Hanif reading from his new book while I was waiting for my phone to charge, and I had a little cry. But we're back. We're so back. I read You Exist Too Much by Zaina Arafat for the Gay Rights January pick. Gay Rights is a e-book club. We meet on Zoom every month. I really value the community that James has created with gay rights. I have made friends through gay rights that are now friends in real life. I have visited, I've spent time with in person, and also I've made a lot of really fun internet friendships, and James is just very good at facilitating community. So shout out to James. They're great. And I really enjoyed this book, and most of us on the book club meeting, I think, enjoyed it. I think we all liked it. We had some interesting discussions. This is a book about a Palestinian American young woman, and she has a love addiction, and she goes to rehab for her love addiction. And we also see her throughout her life, from her childhood to her, I think, like mid-20s, maybe late 20s. The book launch was over Zoom back in 2020, so you can watch that on YouTube. I watched part of it, and Roxane Gay is talking to Zaina Arafat about why she wrote this book, inspiration about it, and she said something that I thought really captured kind of the heart of the book. It's about occupied territories and dissatisfaction. Not only the occupied territory of Palestine, but the main character's lovers as occupied territory. I'm phrasing that poorly. Roxane did a better job than I did, but the main character struggles with love addiction. A lot of the people that she falls in love with are already in relationships or are emotionally unavailable, and she has to confront what she is chasing when she chases these people. Her relationship with her mother is also very central to the plot of this book. I empathize with the main character so much. She makes the same mistakes repeatedly, and then she finds new mistakes to make, and she makes those repeatedly, which is what we all do in our lives. It's kind of a universal human experience. I did look her up. I watched a bit of that video, and I was hoping that I would find like, oh, new book coming from her in 2024, because this book did come out almost 4 years ago, but I couldn't find any new publications from her. There's definitely a couple articles that she's written recently, but I did see a mention that she's working on an essay collection, so that is something I will keep my eye out for, and hopefully we'll see that in the future. But yeah, a really, really deep and meaningful queer book by a Palestinian American, about a Palestinian American, that I think more people should read. Next, I read Like Water for Chocolate by Laura Esquivel. I think I'm saying that right. She is a Mexican author. This was a huge book in the 90s. Like, everybody and their mother read it. It was turned into a very successful movie that I do have the DVD from the library, and I will watch it hopefully in the next couple weeks. That apparently is a very good adaptation, so if you've seen the movie and you really love that, I'm sure you would love the book. This is drama. If you like drama, if you like gossip, this is the book for you. You have to read it. It's very propulsive. I started reading it, and then I was like, oh my god, what is happening? I need to figure out what is going to happen to these characters. They inspire such intense emotions very quickly. Yeah, Esquivel is really that girl. She wrote the book that, like, I think Shakespeare was trying to write. Actually, I texted Colleen because we were buddy reading this, and I was a little bit stoned when I texted her, but I said, what did I say? Yeah, this is the book that Shakespeare could never be that bitch because he didn't write this book, but this is what he wanted to write, but he couldn't, and Laura could. Set during, I believe, the 1910s. It's during the Mexican Revolution, and food is very important to this book. Family, love, duty. You get some really beautiful magical realism. I love magical realism. If you ever have magical realism recommendations, please send them my way. I would lovingly take them. And yeah, I really enjoyed my reading experience. If you want a book that's going to pull you out of a reading slump, that's really going to get you back into having fun with reading, this would be a great choice for that. Last book that I read in January is Roaming by Mariko and Jillian Tamaki. I love the Tamakis. I loved Skim. I loved This One Summer. I loved Super Mutant Magic Academy. And guys, the Tamakis are so back. This book was so good. I was really anticipating it last year, but I don't know why I didn't read it right when it came out. I just didn't. And then me and Georgia and Caitlin read this as our like mini book club book for January. The two of them didn't enjoy it as much as I did, which is fine. It's fine. It doesn't bother me. We can all have different opinions. But this is, again, I'm going to say maybe one of my top books of the year. I know it's early to say that. It's only January, but this could be a book of the year for me. This follows two childhood best friends and a potential interloper as they spend their university spring break in New York City in the late aughts. I think it's like 2007 or 2006. I've never been to New York City, but I have been a young, irritating queer person in a foreign country, and I think that the Tamakis capture that experience and the experience of just being 18 or 19 and being back with a friend that knows you in one context, but you're in this new context, and then there's this other person here, and you're on like an adventure, and you maybe just behave shitty. That experience they really capture. I love this book. Art is so gorgeous because it's the Tamakis. Of course, the art is gorgeous. Like the way they capture the backgrounds and the character of New York. Again, I've never been there. The museum scenes in here are so beautiful and so like true. And yeah, just the behavior of the 18, 19-year-old, like, oh, making mistakes and then kind of treating your friends like shit and then realizing that you've done that and then you have to apologize, but you're still kind of mad at each other. I don't know. I loved this. I loved it so much. Oh, just beautiful, gorgeous. Georgina Sparks. Loved it. Loved it. So those are the books I read in January. I was, I think, pretty happy with my reading this month. I definitely, again, read maybe more than I meant to, but I enjoyed a lot of it. And I hope that you enjoyed your January reading. Please let me know a book that you really liked in January, or a book that you really didn't like and I should stay away from and not spend my time on. Because there's so many books to read out there, guys. Anyways, I hope you read some wonderful books very soon.